Hello everyone, welcome back to a very crispy Throttle Grotto. Even though it smells like burnt toast and cat food in here, I still have to make videos, I still have to make content, and I still have to fix these broken cars that I have laying around the property because I make bad decisions. So those of you that are not sleeping through this video already will notice that the car is up on the quick jacks and there's a pile of parts laying around it, which only means one thing. Things have gone terribly wrong. Let me show you what went wrong. I decided I was just going to do the clutch, not film it. Probably better that way. Well, I have the transmission out. The transmission is out on the ground. I had to pull the exhaust. And the input shaft, you can see here the input shaft in this photo had the input shaft, or the pilot bearing was stuck on the transmission, which meant that it would not come out of the car, which meant that I had to make a wrench. I had to make this wrench, in fact, a candy cane shaped 6mm Allen wrench so that I could undo the flywheel bolts through the notch in the starter housing and get all of the clutch stuff to release. So this little guy right here was the cause of all my problems. And you can see that it was clearly frozen onto the input shaft. I actually had to use a bearing puller to get this off. Okay, you'll have to forgive my old eyes and my willingness to not get readers. So this is a 6201 bearing, which is the same as I got in the replacement kit for the clutch, which is also, the inner diameter is too small to fit over the input shaft. So we're going to have to sand that down. I'll probably use this bearing as a guide. The other thing we need to do is get the transmission up here on the workbench, which historically is a filthy mess, but is now clean. I mean, clean enough to roll a crappy bearing across, right? Oh dear God. Does this shop really lean that much? It's not too bad, right? What's that thing weigh? 40,000 pounds? Probably at least that. Now we'll get a little tray underneath it, just in case I do something dumb and spill fluid everywhere. Maybe the doing something dumb is putting it on the workbench in the first place. Look at that, appropriately sized. All right, through the wonders of, I don't know, illumination or what have you. But I'm going to clean up the inside of the bell housing here with some brake clean, because you can see in here it clearly was leaking. So one of the issues with this, the reason this was not going into gear, I presume, is this little button here. It's the button that the pivot, it's called the pivot ball or something like that, but it's a nylon ball. So I'm going to pop this thing out and compare it to a new one, because I think that was why the clutch was on the floor. Sometimes taking a moment to look at things, it looks like I can just knock it out from the backside. And then I will compare it to a, oh God, look at all the RTV on this thing. It's terrible. Oh God, what's supposed to go here? Oh. I was able to get the fill and drain plugs out though, which was like a giant surprise, because this one's in pretty rough shape. All right, so there is the pivot pin. It does look broken. I'm going to compare that to the brand new one I have. All right, so got the pin deal sorted out, which was the pin that I got was for an E36. So I have another pin coming on the way. I'm just going to do a little more cleanup on the transmission and see what I can do about getting some of this other stuff sealed up. I do have a fill plug coming. I'm going to take this off because I know there's a seal in here that's got to come out. I'm not sure if down here, if this is a seal or if this is just a place where a bunch of junk collected. This is the fun of learning a new platform, is not knowing anything and figuring out as you go. Okay, so one of the other things I noticed when the shifter and everything was in the car, this is where the bracket bolts to on top of the transmission for the shift linkage, and this interfaces with the shift linkage. Yes, it's got some play there, but this has a lot of play because somebody had it out and didn't put the washer back in it. It clearly tightened it. So I'm going to put a washer in there, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. All right, I got my light back. So I'm going to try taking this piece off and see what it looks like. Now it's wet in there because I went through and power washed the transmission. So this seal's got to come out. Okay, so I also undid the 6 bolts here that hold this flange on, because it looks like someone was also in here. Let's see if I can get it to pop loose, just like that. There we go. Now I can easily replace that seal and just pop it out, pop a new one in when that shows up. Look at these bearings. I mean, they all seem decent. And of course, I'll have to use some kind of sealant on this to put it back together. I have my Toyota seal packing, which I might use because I use this on the Datsun to seal up the leak there. All right, so the next step, I guess, is in prepping this transmission is to get the guibo off of here so I can get this flange off. After a trip to 3 different stores to find a 30mm deep well socket, I can now take that off, because this seal should definitely be replaced. Make sure that is a seal before I go prying on it. It's gonna be really great if I pried on something that wasn't a seal and damaged it. There we go. That's a crusty seal. That one's been in there for a long time. Alright, next up is the taking apart of the shift shaft. And I'm not entirely sure how this goes, but it sure seems like this snap ring has something to do with it. See if I can get this just to slide off of there, release whatever detent or whatever is going on here. Pin that needs to get pushed out. There we go. So now that's off of there. I think I'm going to wait on that one until I have the seal in hand to compare with it. But in the meantime, it's not like I have nothing else to work on. Now we wait for parts. Okay, everybody, so here is the problem that I've been struggling with for a few days. This is a brand new 6201 RS bearing. So the measurements on this, if I actually learn to use my calipers in the correct way, so the measurements on this bearing are 3208, 32, which is correct. It's supposed to be a 32. It's supposed to be like a 10 wide and like a 12. So this is like 11.95 is the dimension of the bearing inside. Yeah, 11.96. So just under 12 millimeters. The problem is that the shaft on the transmission is 12.68. So it's like half a mil larger than the bearing, which makes it do this. So what we need to make it do is do that. How am I going to do that? Pretty easily, actually. What I have here is actually a fairly easy problem to solve. I have a bearing, I have a Dremel with a grinding bit that just fits inside of the bearing, and I'm just going to grind out the center of the bearing just enough to get it to slide over the input shaft, which is up there. Some of you may think that I should have turned down the input shaft to fit the bearing. I disagree. This is how I'm going to do it. Now that we've got the bearing to where it easily slides on and off the input shaft, that's a win. And that's going to make putting the transmission in and out of the car a whole lot easier. So there we go. Now I can go through and do the seals. So I've got 3 big seals to replace. I've got this one here, and then the rear one here, and the tiny one up here on the selector shaft. So I'm going to get a start on that. All right, we're not really doing anything super sciencey here. We're just replacing a seal that's worn out with a brand new one. And this might just pop out with my hands. I don't know. Not likely. We'll need some implement of influence here. This part is also smeared with the schmutz, so I need to clean all this off. And I'm probably going to end up putting sealant back on these parts because I don't know if they're warped. I don't know if they'll actually seal. And I feel like I can do a better job with a better product than what the last person used on this stuff. All right, so I've got a new seal for the back end here. This one should just slip right into place. You can see the difference between the two here. Just one is really, really old and crunchy. That one is not sealing anything from anyone. Fortunately, I've got this right here, which will work. One brand new seal there. Literally just a dab of oil, gear oil on this. Just enough to make it slide through there. What I'm going to use on this is a very, very light coat of this Toyota seal packing. It's supposed to be really good against oils, made for oil pans and camshaft housings. I don't think it's made for this purpose, but I don't trust this entirely. There's not a really great lip here. It's got a few little burrs on it if you feel it by hand. I don't think it's perfect. So I'm going to use some of this product on here, just a really, really light film, just to help. Since there was so much crap inside the bell housing, I don't want to take any chances with having any problems down the road, even though I kind of feel like this transmission is not going to be in here for an extremely long-term lifespan. Like, the car's got 335,000 miles on it. I don't know if I trust that it's going to be something that is going to be reliable. But hopefully just a real light film of this in the right spots, unlike what I'm doing now. Let's get that off of there, because that is the part that interfaces with the washer behind it. And then literally just a skim coat on there. And then this piece indexes into the housing. So it's got a little hole, or there's a bolt with a recess right there. I'll see if I can see the recess in the housing, which lines up back here with this hole. I presume this is a return, so that when fluid comes out, it slides down this and goes right back into the transmission instead of going into my bell housing. I'll get this tightened up, and then I can finish cleaning out the inside of the bell housing and get all this grease out of here, because it's pretty nasty and I don't want to have any of this stuff contaminate my clutch down the road, like soon. So you can see how much of that I actually used from that dollop. It's just enough just to get a little skim coat on there, just in case that seal weeps a little bit. Hopefully it keeps it all in the transmission and not in my clutch. I'm going to let this stuff, the seals, or the sealant actually, set up overnight. And when I get back from work tomorrow, we'll clean out the bell housing. We'll put the pilot bearing into the crank, because that's where it needs to be. And we're going to check the flywheel, all that kind of stuff. Clean the rest of this bell housing out. I do have the new pivot pin that I can put in tomorrow, so that is taken care of. And this was definitely causing clutch problems, because the height of this clutch pin is significantly less than the replacement part. All right, so we have parts. You can see here the size difference in the factory nylon nub and the replacement one from Condor Speed Shop, this brass one. This one's the right one because it has the right diameter. Okay, I'm just going to use a piece of brass on a piece of brass. So, all right, it is day, I don't know, it's a lot of days. It took a long time to get parts. Through various faults of my own, including forgetting to hit the right button on the camera. I didn't get any video from underneath the car of putting the transmission back in the car. But it's in the car, and that's as close as I got last night. I didn't get any of the mounts or any of that kind of stuff in. because I was tired. It fought me all the way back in the car, just like it fought me all the way out. I don't know why. I don't care. It's in the car. I hope I don't have to take it out again. Got some parts to clean up before I can finish mounting the transmission in the car, put the exhaust back in, put the driveline back in, hook up the starter, clutch slave, all that stuff. So that's what I'm doing today. One of the real gems you missed was all of this sound deadening coming out of the transmission tunnel. It was a lot of it, and it made a huge mess underneath the car. So I gotta pick all this crap up and throw it away. If you have any suggestions on what to replace it with, you can leave those in the comments below. All right, next step is to clean up these brackets for the exhaust and the lower cross member for the transmission here, so I can put this back in. And then I have a pair of new transmission mounts to put in, because these are truly perished. Yeah, they're done. All right, before we get under the car, there's one of the things I have to show you here. I don't know why someone did this, but it looks like they cut out the back of the shifter bowl with a drill, and yeah, so we got to fix that. I found this little piece of aluminum in my scrap bin and kind of traced out the rough opening of how it was jigsawed out of there. I'm just going to cut this down a little bit, trim the edges up. I think all it does is the console bolts to that, but I also want to have something in there for now until I can decide what I'm going to do with the car. If I'm going to pull this thing apart and weld it, you know, fix all that stuff. All right, so it's not pretty, it's not great, but it should work. It is at least closed up to where it would have been from the factory, sort of, maybe, kind of, not really. But that's an improvement, let's say. At least it gives me some place to attach the console. All right, now that we have our transmission back in the car, the only rust hole that I found was underneath that insulation. And it's like right over here, right about the end of my thumb. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that for now. I'm probably just going to do something silly like cover it with some aluminum tape, just to keep water egress from happening until, again, I don't know what I'm going to do with this car yet. Might keep it, might have it for a little while and sell it, I don't know. But the rest of it's in pretty good shape. There's one right there, there's one small, right there's one little small rust hole. I know all the guys from the East Coast and the Midwest are like, bro, you need to shut your face because the car is like mad clean. And I don't disagree with you. I've lived in the Midwest before. But I'm spoiled. I live in the Northwest now. This car is practically totaled from rust. Just kidding. All the exhaust stuff's in pretty good shape. Floor pan's in pretty good shape. I mean, for as long as this car was sitting in, I'm going to say damp conditions. I don't know if it was parked on concrete or grass. I know it was parked on grass when I found it. But overall, pretty good shape. Okay, we're still in cramped quarters here, but we're making progress. So I have the shifter bracket now installed on those little rubber mounts. I have the shift lever installed in the correct orientation because I put it in backwards the first time. A little rubber bumper is installed up here. I guess it's like a movement damper for the whole shifter assembly. Now I need to go up and put the shifter through the hole and attach it here before I put the drive shaft in and the guibo. And then I can keep moving along on this stuff. I have to get all this to drop back into where it's supposed to live. So there's a spring, there's a little plastic washer, there's this cap And then there's my giant hands and this retaining clip. That all needs to kind of work together here. And I can't believe that went in that easy. I should have put the console back in place first, but hey, not that smart. Okay, so now the console is sort of back in position. I don't know why when I move this thing around I hear a spring. That doesn't make any sense to me. Who knows? Anyway, so I can go back down and hook the shifter up underneath with that piece of linkage, and then come back up here and make sure it goes through the gears before I go any further. Okay. Oh, look at that. Okay. That seems to do gear shift things. All right, so let's see here. Again, I don't have a lot of room underneath this car to work and show you guys things, but we've got the brackets in that hold the exhaust. The exhaust is back in. That was just basically putting in a couple of gaskets on the exhaust manifold and a new gasket back there. So the exhaust is in like really good shape. This is actually wild. Like if you look at the bottom of the muffler, there's still a decal on here. Somebody bought an exhaust and put it on, and the sticker is still on the bottom of the muffler. Now I can't read anything on it, but probably like an inventory control sticker or something. I have a list of all the things that still need to be done. Need to fill the transmission, check the rear diff. I've got a fuel line clamp I've got to replace. Order some electrical connectors, these little blue and brown ones for the 7th injector. I'm going to replace the T-fitting on here, as this is plastic for the fuel, instead of make a metal one, or at least put a new one in there. I got to change the oil, change the coolant, flush the brakes, change the timing belt and water pump, do some tires, run the ozone machine in this thing, find some seat parts, because the seats in here are completely chewed up just from being old. What would be amazing is if I could find a cardinal red interior for this thing and change it all out to cardinal red. I think that would look really good with the crappy silver paint out here. Get a duplicate key. I gotta lube the shift pivot underneath the shift boot and attach the console, which I made a little bracket for underneath. See if I can do this without dumping it everywhere. Save one of these bags that comes with your transmission fluid, because they are kind of handy for filling. And this is going to be so messy. Oh my god. There's not a great way to do this by yourself. You can at least twist the bag up into spots, kind of make it a little more viable to do by yourself. I did want to show you guys. I ended up buying a wrench. I haven't bought a wrench for anything specific in quite a while, but the top starter bolt is just in the crappiest place. It's like down here on top of the bell housing. So I bought one of these wrenches from my local, bought it from, let's say, my local house of budget tools that you may not use all the time. It actually did a really good job of getting in there. It's got a really low profile head. Was able to get in there, and then I was able to jam a pry bar in on the bolt side here and hold the bolt in place. So that worked really well for that upper starter bolt, which was a pain. It's gonna do a real janky, throw some Throw some of this white lithium in there just to lube the top of that ball. First thing I can do is check and see if I have a good clutch pedal. And that does feel like, that feels pretty good. It's like about a half to an inch of travel. So that's a good sign. Now that I got this grumpy old pig woken up a little bit, I couldn't tell you why the danger of the manifold light is on, but let's see here. I'll go down here. That should be reverse. Yep, that's reverse. And then first, that's good. Second, third, fourth is really sounds terrible, and fifth. So we've got all the gears. All right, so that is good progress for the E30. You've got a working clutch. The transmission seems to be going in all the gears, although it's a little noisy. But given that there was no fluid in it, I might be in for a transmission replacement. But I'm gonna run this for a little bit. I'm gonna run it up on the stand, get everything flushed out, and change the fluid in it one more time before I actually get it on the road, because got to get all that junk out of there. But the car's running, which means now it's time for the timing belt. So I could take it apart again. But just like more things on the list of things to do. That's one more job checked off on the E30. That's all the time I have for today. Until next time, get out there and work on something.